Okay, I think we've got most people that were in the lobby are now in. So thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome. We have got a really good session lined up for you today. For those that don't know me, I'm Leo Hewitt, founder of Core3. We do CFO search and finance recruitment for scaling organizations across the UK. And alongside the recruitment bit, we've been building our Inner Circle community now for a good few years. And one of the main reasons why we're here is that we survey and speak to lots of CFOs and FDs all the time, as you can imagine. And the number one topic that keeps coming up is AI. And at the time, there wasn't really a place where finance leaders could come to just get some practical answers to the questions that they had of where to begin with AI. There was an awful lot of blue sky, big picture stuff, where the future of finance is going, but there's nothing maybe that you could just implement tomorrow that can take a little bit of weight off your shoulders. And a lot of our clients are in scaling organizations, whether that's PE-backed, VC-backed, founder-led, rapid growth, and the biggest blocker is just time and not having the ability or the breathing space to take a moment and just invest that time into you and your team to develop these processes to hopefully then free up your time. So you're not alone. Everybody, hopefully that sounds a little bit familiar to most people here. And within this workshop series alone, we've now got 560 finance leaders registered. Of those 560s, we surveyed all of you, and the theme is quite consistent across the board. So only 2% of the 560 of you are using AI across multiple finance processes right now. 8% have started embedding it into workflows, and 75%, which is the vast majority of you, are just playing around with the tools personally outside of your team, and 15% haven't started at all, which is absolutely fine, and hopefully why we're here today. On the last CFO roundtable I hosted with Peter, he said a stat that really stood out to me. For every hour you invest in setting this up, we're investing in AI, you get 5 to 8 hours back. So that's one thing that I just really want to stick in people's minds, that because often that's the blocker, is I just don't have the time. The only time you'll lose is that initial setup hour it might take, but that from then on, you're getting 5 to 8 hours back for your team, for yourself, and the compound interest of that over time is quite considerable. So hopefully today we'll just take a bit of weight off your shoulders, give you a bit of clarity, take the blue sky theory into real practical things you can do tomorrow. And as you all know, today's topic is AI for FP&A. So we're digging into forecasting, budgeting, how to use it, how to prompt it in a way that is useful. And I'm really pleased to be joined yet again by Peter Beard. So for those that haven't seen Peter in action before, Peter is ex-Big Four ACA. He is on the board of the ICAEW, and he now runs GenFinance.ai, which is a AI consultancy helping finance leaders do just this, like set up AI in a way that is useful and reliable, and the data is safe, and it frees up finance teams to do more of the value add stuff, which we all enjoy a lot more than the manual data processing stuff. So without further ado, I'm really pleased to introduce Mr. Peter Beard.
Thank you, Leo. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're doing well. And thank you for joining this session. We're going to be really jam-packed today with lots of use cases going through today's session in terms of what we're going to be covering. So just a bit of an update for those that joined previously, what's new since March. In terms of, before we get into today's demo, just a bit of how we get these general purpose AI tools to be able to get the outputs that we want from a finance and accounting perspective. So we're going to talk over the Facets prompt framework, which is ICAEW developed, and that's been iterated over 3,000 use cases and tried again, which has now become really robust. We're going to go through at least 6 use cases across 4 themes across this, including budget, reporting, appraisal, analytics, etc. Now, there will be more use cases than we can cover in this session today. That's okay, because at the end of this, you're going to get this deck in addition to a full library of 30 prompts, which are specific for FP&A. Key takeaways and next steps, and a chance for Q&A. If you do have questions throughout, please do raise them and put them in the chat. Intermittently in between these sections, we will try and answer them as best as possible. But if there aren't any in the moment, we will certainly be to answer them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in terms of what's new since March this year, just a bit of a highlight to reiterate Leo's point is the AI adoption curve. It's really a journey, and most people today are level 1s and level 2s. There are some level 3s right now, but the vast majority of finance teams are at that experimentation phase. What does that look like is really kind of individual use. It's maybe that you have a personal account or even then, can't be using it for our professional work, or you've been given license to them, but there's no real structure of identifying those opportunities, knowing where it works, knowing where it doesn't, such that by the end of this session, I want to make sure that you guys know what you can do to start this week, what it's actually capable of and possible of, and to really stretch that boundaries such that you can rank up your levels. So if you're an experimenter, become a piloter. If you're a piloter, become a user. If you're becoming a user, start really embedding this throughout your workflows and tasks and actually get AI to do the jobs for us, such that you're now turning from a preparer into a reviewer. That's the aim of this today with Human in the Loop AI. Really, just to bring this home, this was a recent survey done by Anthropic. Anthropic owns Claude, one of the big 6 GenAI platforms. Now, this is a really, really in-depth survey that they've done and research. The summary of this is that it's done throughout this radar diagram, a range of industries. And effectively, blue means this is what GenAI is capable of today in terms of doing the tasks. Red is currently where teams are adopting. And you can see here that most teams are only sort of in the market. The adoption rate is only like 10 to 20%. There's a fraction of what's possible compared to what is capable of doing for business and finance. This specific one in the top corner, this is the one that we're concerned about. There are others real world scenarios like construction. We know that scope is low right now until robotics gets better. But as far as from the sort of knowledge-based work, business and finance, computing and math, it's right up there with being second, if not the most scope for change. So key takeaway from this is that it's definitely changing. It's something that we need to act on very quickly and to kind of get to grips with. And you want to bring yourself up to the envelope, up to the frontier as fast as you can from a knowledge point of view. In terms of what's new since our last webinar in March 2026, there's a few things that come out. So Anthropic, one of the big 6 GenAI platforms, has released a new model, Claude Opus 4.7. It is their most capable model to date. If anyone's tried it before, please do put a comment in, see how you find it as an experience. A couple of new things. Claude Design has also been relaunched. So this allows us to do really complex design and marketing, and also helps us create really powerful dashboards from a finance and accounting perspective too, more than just what they used to be able to do with artifacts. So it's a big change there. We're encouraged to have a go. Claude Cowork, there's a lot going on here. We will be carving that out separately in a session. There's a lot to unpack there with what Cowork's recently capable of. In terms of updates from Microsoft and OpenAI, so recently, Microsoft doesn't have their own LLM per se. Well, they do have their own LLMs, but the one that is in Copilot is powered by OpenAI to date. However, since then, they did have an exclusivity contract that has since been renegotiated, and now they are beginning to bring in other AI models, one of them being Claude as well. So bear that in mind. It will be coming. Doesn't mean, though, that just because the engine's there, of the model doesn't mean it's functionally the same. Your experience with these tools is highly correlated to the large language model behind it from one of those big 6 players, which is Claude, Copilot, OpenAI, Google Gemini, Perplexity, and Grok. Those are big 6. They take up 95% of the market. It's also about the features and functions that they bring as well. In terms of the wider market, Perplexity Computer recently came out. This is where it's becoming really agentic. So what does that actually mean? It means it can take control of your screen, click buttons, fill in forms, and type in information. Imagine sort of booking your flights, for example. It can go through that full end-to-end process and do that. And you can see it in action as though it's like a person hovering a mouse and typing with a keyboard. to summarize, in terms of the current latest leaderboard, where these models are. So one of the things, you guys need to, that we need to keep up to speed with is how capable are these models? There's basically two levers that you're looking for when you're thinking about a large language model or indeed a GenAI platform. The first one's intelligence. How smart is the model? How well can it handle a complex task? Think of it like the CPU in the laptop or the engine in the car. And then the other variable here, which you can see there, is context. Context is all about how well can it handle as the size of the task. So treat that like the RAM in the computer or the fuel tank in the car. It's all about the range and the size of the task. And so having that balance, we want more intelligence is better, more context is better. And so we need to keep up to date with that over time. You can see right now, Claude Opus is currently top the leaderboard rankings. Currently, there isn't a benchmark for finance accounting specifically. It's an aggregation of other benchmarks, but one will be coming soon. So watch this space. For reference of how you get this information, it's a really simple way. There's currently a public provider. I'm just going to share screen, which hopefully you can see. Hopefully you can see if that's coming through, Leo.
Yep, got it.
Perfect. So there's a website called artificialanalysis.ai. This ranks the public leaderboards of the large language models to date. So it's an aggregator, puts it all together. Intelligence, you can see here, is measured for a range of benchmarks, whether that's math, science, computer science, foreign languages, etc. So that's where it's compiled with context window. And you can see there the models as well. The other one you might want to see is speed as well. So it might be that one's better, but it might be slower. So something to trade off as well in terms of your own productivity. Just reshare the slides. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to show you some use cases. To do that, I need to show you how you can get, from a finance and accounting perspective, what you can do to get rapid and quality, trustworthy, auditable results from these tools. The key one there is that these work papers, the outputs these produce have to be reviewable. They have to be auditable. Us as finance professionals, that's our duty to make sure that we can own those numbers. We're still very much on the hook with this. We can't defer accountability to these tools. We need to understand and how we can talk to them in a way which gives us consistent, reliable quality outputs, indistinguishable from human input. And so here it is. So this has been developed with the ICAW. This is their proprietary framework. And so it's called the Facets Framework. If there's one thing to take away from this session, it's this. It's the Facets Framework. For day-to-day context, we use facets, but we do start with the word task. So the first one is to say, with a task, we're just defining that out so we can get a clear example of, analyze, build, research, search, prepare, etc. Then leading with that example. So then we're leading with the audience to saying, look, build for me an age debtor analysis for my line manager, for the FC or for the CFO, or 13-week cash flow forecast for the CFO and FD. With that as well, here's a context, here's some business background. This is our business, this is our customers, our sales, etc. A kind of a master document of where that's housed. That can be connected to your SharePoint, that can be connected to your OneDrive, so it has a semantic understanding of who we are as a company. Followed by example. So you either example of, this is the layout that I want in my work paper. I want tab 1 to be work performed, tab 2 to be assumptions, tab 3 in my forecasting to be the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, the middle of the case scenario. I might have some stress tests and reverse stress tests and sensitivities. I might have the source data to show where the data came from, whether it's sales transactions, purchase transactions. And then I might have validation checks at the end. With that as well, then we're going to go into what that format is. So what is it? We're looking for an Excel file format with those tabs. We want column headers, layout, color schemes. If it's formula driven, we want the text to be green. If it's assumption driven, it's blue. It means we can optically review it far, far quicker as the reviewer. So we don't have to go into a black cell and know, is it hard coded or is it formula driven? We can just see straight away. And the last one's then sources. So which data are you using to produce that forecast? What are your data sources to be able to produce it?
And just to note for everybody who didn't make the last session in March, we went through facets in a lot more depth, step by step, sort of how to set it up. It sounds like a lot, but once you set it up once and you've got the folders set up where you've got the knowledge files that it will use time and time again, it just becomes a lot easier and much more repeatable. So if anybody needs that recording, we can send it around after this event as well.
Thank you, Leo. And we get a couple of frequent questions of, there are other prompt frameworks out there, whether that's from Microsoft with GCSE framework or others for other industries. The message is for finance and accounting, as per kind of ICAW developed, this is the framework, from that point of view that we've kind of co-authored, co-developed with them. That's been stress tested over thousands of tries.
Okay, we've got lots of people wanting the recording. So after this event, we'll send the recording of this one and the recording of the last one, along with both prompt cheat sheets that you need.
Thank you, Leo. So with facets, there's a couple of other things you want to do to get high grade prompt quality, and you'll have this at the end, is firstly, is traceable formulas. This is absolute gold dust. When we say we want an Excel made, we have to tell it, look, all values where possible need fully traceable formula to source data. Use sum ifs, count ifs, XLOOKUPs, or direct cell references. No hard coded values, cell values where possible. If a cell is neither green nor blue, it fails the review. This is what makes it auditable. We just ask it to show its workings. The next one is then validation checks. These are your series of review checks at the end of the work paper to make sure that the work paper is working as intended. Things that just should not go wrong. For example, the subtotals should equal the total. The general ledger should equal to the subledger. The TB ties out. There are no duplicate entries, or the count of the rows in the source data that we gave it is the same count of the rows that it's analyzed with. It hasn't made up new rows. It hasn't deleted rows. The nature of the rows hasn't changed either. This is what's captured in your validation checks as well. And if anything fails, we can then say pass or fail and investigate. This what takes it, from unreviewable to fully reviewable, and also quickly too. The third one is then work paper structure. So we can say, look, tab 1, I always want it to be my, my steps performed. We can say, Claude or ChatGPT, define what work you did, document it, tell me what you did, then do the working tabs, then have the source data, and then have your validation checks. So it makes it really easy and auditable from your reviewer's perspective and your auditor's perspective as well. So we'll have this all three standards as a copy paste block. So each time when we come into the use cases, we'll be demonstrating that. We'll be copy and pasting this each time so we can get that loaded in and you can see some examples in action. So in today's demo, we're going to be showing two companies across multiple use cases. The first is a fictitious company. It's not a real company, it's a fake company, but that we've created a full set of data sets for, whether that's trial balance, accounts receivable, accounts payable, sales, purchase transactions, in the style of an SAP or a Xero type report, a base raw report you'd get out of your accounting software. The next is then going to be going more public facing. So thinking about like a company, for example, Marks and Spencer's Group PLC, which as we know is a UK retailer in food, clothing and home. So we're going to be using lots of use cases with this. Whilst we're doing this, before we dive into the use cases, Leo, if we had any questions on the line.
Yeah, there was a good one from Beth. Just said, I'm assuming these instructions are the kind of thing you can build into a skill in Claude, so you don't need to paste them every time.
Short answer is yes. Either paste them in skills, paste them in projects, or now recently, if you have a business or enterprise plan with Claude, you can also have organization level organization level instructions and skills as well. So it's done once for the team. The CFO can centrally control that copy paste block. And that's part of their review control over time, is that they curate it, update it over time, that it fits the need and the requirements. Okay, great. So let's get into it. What I'm just going to do is, whilst we're getting our use cases loaded up for FP&A, I'm just going to show you a recent example of one that's pre-made, just so you can see what the kind of thing it can produce. So I'm just going to share screen. Let me know where you can see it.
Got it.
Perfect. So this is just a recent example of an FP&A task of analyzing our aged customers and seeing if we need to do any kind of write-off or any kind of write-down with it, and seeing what kind of customer behaviors we can identify out of it. What we did is that we pasted inside of here the full facets prompt. So look, we want to perform an aged customer analysis based on this. We have the context of the business. We attached a customer master data file and an accounts receivable file. For the avoidance of doubt, this is what it looks like. So if I go into that AR file, you can see inside of here, we have an AR listing, exactly what you would expect, or the kind of thing you would see inside of your working papers or within your accounting software. As well with a customer master file, if I go into the data set like so, you can see data being loaded from a customer master perspective. Again, these are all fictitious names and businesses, but there they are. So what we did is then we can load that in, have that loaded up with a business overview of who that business is. That's our context and the facets. We can get that loaded. And then inside what we can do, if I go on to here, we can have our age debtors analysis. So this is the same one here, with the same prompt inside, and we can have that full working paper like so. I just bring this across. So you can see from here, we get that full working paper. Just as an example, I'll highlight the tabs so we can see them a bit more clearly. Like so. So we have our work performed. We can say, inside of Claudia, tell us the objective, tell us the scope, tell us the procedures performed inside. Again, this has come straight from the source material. Here it is there. We can download it. We can review it, etc. This is inside of Claude right now to get it to do the procedures performed. And then from there, when we're saying, formula-driven values are green, assumptions are blue, this is what we're talking about. That we can see the full traceable formulas inside here. We have the blue assumptions value here. So these are hard-coded. We can tweak with those and adjust the calculations, which are then being performed. Anything which then needs our judgment call, we can say, Claude, highlight this, or ChatGPT, highlight this yellow, so that we can go into that and know this is where we need to enter in our assumptions. We can have that analysis there with our key metrics that's been pulled across from our source data. So our source data is now being highlighted blue. We can see that with the source AR, source customer master file as well. And we can go into the details. So it's now enriched it. So it said, like, from this master data, I've now done automatic bucketing from that, highlighted them, percentage of AR total. It's done a matching formula to make sure the customers match, if there's a completeness or accuracy difference. With inside, we've got credit checks. You're making sure they're fit within terms. Are there any unusual ones? None. That's great from a control perspective. Account status, they active or closed based on the purchase activity or buying activity from them with industry. And then the last point here, so we have that detail, we have that summary. We can see here top 10 customers by value, also with the charting that's been prepared for us automatically in that period. And this is the really important one, is the validation checks. This is how you make sure you get comfortable with the workbook quickly. This is almost like your sniff test or smell test when doing these work papers. So we can see, for example, does the subledger agree to the general ledger? It does. So therefore, we expect 40,000. It's actually 40,000. We can see the formula by doing control left square bracket or command left square bracket if you're on Mac to show us where it got the data from. Zero variance, therefore it has passed. The next one, does the sum of the net plus the VAT equal the gross? It does, therefore it passes. Does the percentage of the totals equal 100%? It does, therefore it passes. Does the count of the rows equal the same as what we expect? It does, therefore it passes. In terms of the aging, do the sum of the buckets equal the total buckets? They do, so it passes. We can also see here, even in the context note, in our facets, we put 30K. It even spotted that we had a 10K misalignment in our prompt. So it was smart enough to know that actually our prompt needed amending. We said 30K, but it's actually 40K based on the subledger, with then a space for review sign off as well.
This bit is such a time saver, isn't it? Just to do a lot of the validation for you.
Yes, no, exactly. Suddenly now you might take, 5 to 6 hours preparing this, or 4 to 6 hours, and then review time. And it probably doesn't look as good as this in terms of it's not as pretty, not as easy to review. But now suddenly it's straight away, right, it's prepared, it's reviewed. I can review this in 5 minutes, come back with some comments, and I can get this workbook done in about, 10, 15 minutes with my line manager, and I can do this across 30 reconciliations or 30 analyses straight off the bat. So,
got a couple of questions, Peter.
Please, yes, whilst I get the next use cases loaded.
One that comes up pretty much every single one of these is the data security question. When using customer data and business data, how do you mitigate any concerns surrounding data protection, confidentiality, and GDPR?
Really good question. So to answer that, I'm just going to, if you can still see my screen on the web on Claude.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, so a really quick way to answer this question is it's all down to visiting that each of these big six have what's called a trust portal. A trust portal is where you can access and review their documentation. So if I type in, for example, Claude trust portal, inside of here, I can go into the trust center. And inside, this is where they house their documentation. What you're looking for finance and accounting specifically is SOC Type 2, SOC Type 1 and Type 2, ISO 27001, ISO 42001 with that documentation and GDPR compliance from a finance and accounting perspective. And also not training on your models, which is only available on business or enterprise. The reason why you can't use free tier versions for this is that you don't get to control whether the AIs, whether these companies train on your data or not. With the business or enterprise, you get to control that. In addition to the resources, what's expected of finance teams as part of developing the policy is firstly to pick the platform. Once you've picked it, to obtain the documentation. Once you have the documentation, is then to download this, add this to your standing SharePoint or whatever, and then have an ongoing review as part of your internal audit, internal control, to review the quality of your IT systems and say, look, we've taken a view, we've understood what these tools are, we've reviewed the SOC reports, and we're comfortable with them. So that's, and same again, if I go on to the others. So for example, OpenAI, Trust Portal. Same scenario here. So GDPR compliance, ISO 27001, 42001, SOC Type 2, SOC Type 3, and as well with the documentation. We can also see the runtime as well. Now, no systems are permeable. We know this from examples like CrowdStrike, etc. If we need to check, what are the current systems? Are they down? Are they up? What we can do is just say Claude status, for example, which will then bring up into status. This will tell you if there's a problem with the website. You can do this with any of the big six, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. You just type in the name and the word status, and it will bring up whether they're up or down, or if there's a security problem or whatever. So, and you can also subscribe to those updates via email. So you get to know firsthand if there's a problem.
Perfect. Question from Tamara. Can Claude link to finance systems to pull the data, or do you need to run the data and save it in a folder?
Short answer is yes, you can. It's something called connectors. Connectors allow you to connect to your accounting software directly, both read access, so it reads the information from the software, and also write access, so being able to affect change in other systems. When people use the word agentic AI, it really just means it's able to write in other places, takes action. That's what connectors are for. Connectors are available in Microsoft Copilot. They're available in Gemini. They're available in Perplexity, OpenAI. Actually, no, come to think of it, in the last 5 weeks, they're available on all of them now. But they do vary in marketplaces. So the size of what you can connect to, some are plug and play. So for example, here, there's a lot of items that you can connect to, whether it's Oracle, whether it's Xero, whether it's Sage, etc. But marketplaces do vary by size depending on which platform you pick.
Perfect. And one more quick question from Miles. Would you advise rerunning from scratch each time, or just using it to create the model once and then reuse that? I asked you to concerns about how much it will eventually cost to run AI versus just reusing a model.
Really good question. So one of the things you'll find in here is the way you get efficient with using these tools is using something called projects. So projects, you can see this inside of ChatGPT as well. For reference, we've done this with other tasks in here. So for example, desk analysis, but each of them have a kind of project space, whether that's new projects here. Inside of Gemini, it has projects. Copilot, they do call them agents, but they roughly work the same in terms of it's a place where you share persistent knowledge inside. Just think this 1 second. Same with Perplexity as well. And same with Copilot, where you have it inside. with projects, the special thing you want to do with them is then you can say, look, you have your facets inside of instructions here, your special instructions. That way, what you can say is, each month then, I don't have to write facets every time. What I can just do is then say, see attached raw report, run for March, run for April. Then your prompt literally is run for P03, for example.
And what I love now with scheduled tasks, you can get this to do it automatically every week or every month without even having to prompt, right?
Exactly, yeah. Specifically with Claude Cowork currently is in research preview, so just to caveat that, but that scheduled tasking is available in ChatGPT today. It is available in Perplexity today. The others, not Grok, it is available today. Claude it is, but only in Cowork. One of the things we get commonly asked as well is, okay, Peter, facets is great, but it's quite onerous to write, and I agree with you. So how do we get, how to get this consistently? One of the ways that we can do this is actually create a prompt improver using facets and say, look, I can talk like a person and I can say, analyze my inventory inside of here. I've done a recent example just a couple of hours ago and say, look, analyze my inventory for business, look for unusual items. By itself, we are introducing subjectivity. We don't want that. Facets constrains it, so it becomes reliable. And so it's saying, look, we're missing audience, context, example, format, sources. Here are some clarifying questions to enrich it so we can get 6 out of 6 top marks from it. We can then unload the context and the data. We can respond to those questions and give the responses to our clarification. And then we can get an updated facets prompt, which is oven ready to go with inside of here. So we have that then produced. And then we can then paste that in and then put it into a project.
Lovely. So let's get into some more meaty use case demos. I'm going to try and keep the questions to the end as much as possible, just conscious of time. If people want to hang around at the end beyond the hard stop at 2 o'clock, then are you okay for that, Peter?
Yes, that's okay. Fine.
Nice one.
Okay, so hopefully you can see the PowerPoint on top of the Word, on top of the Microsoft Edge.
Yeah.
Great. So let's go into some use cases, and we'll start off with some budgeting and forecasting to begin with. So we can do an annual budget build from the TB, and we're going to use Good Office Supplies as our live demo example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this information and have it copy pasted, and I'm going to paste this into our prompt. So I'm going to copy that information. I'm going to go into here and I'm going to run this across multiple as well, so you can see the differences. So there we go. We have our prompt inside within here. And then in terms of that budget build, I'm going to attach that data that we need to. So from here, I might attach trial balance. I might attach previous purchase transaction listing and sales transaction listing, just to get a sense of ins and outs from inside. And also payroll as well with a business overview. So it gives us context around, key changes in the business, key developments, etc. So I'm going to load in that information. We want to choose the best available model. So I'm going to choose Opus 4.7 to date with reasoning. We want reasoning turned on for the best available responses to date. So with that, we can then submit and get that one started.
So what are we asking this to do, Peter?
So we are asking for this use case to build an annual budget build from the trial balance, to produce a 12-month annual budget from the prior year trial balance, applying growth assumptions inside, specifically for the finance director, with an example prior budget, with the intended format of the working paper.
I bet.
So what we can do is, whilst that's one loading, we'll do it in a couple of examples so you can see the similarities and differences. We'll open up ChatGPT and we'll copy exactly the same prompt. We'll upload case study business overview. We'll upload the trial balance, upload the purchase transaction listing, payroll, and sales transaction listing as well. We'll load that in. We've got thinking mode enabled. For most finance accounting tasks, there is an extra mode available, which is the research mode. That normally takes 10 to 25 minutes to answer. For the vast majority of tasks, thinking mode and with reasoning turned on is sufficient for the finance and accounting industry. That pro one's really left for, like, do we buy our business? Do we sell our business? Do a full business valuation where we want to get 400 sources from the internet in terms of data. So get that one loaded. Inside, let's open up Copilot. So again, we're going to paste this one in straight away. We're going to attach and upload the files. We're going to upload a business case study, purchase transaction, payroll and sales, and trial balance. Now, by default, Copilot doesn't use the latest capable model. Inside, what you have to do is click Auto. Specifically, we want to get the best one available. So that's currently GPT 5.4 Think Deeper. So we want to click that and enable it. Once we've done from there, we will then want to proceed. Again, we can get this done in Perplexity. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in a little bit on here, paste in that prompt and show one more comparative. Again, these are your connectors and sources. If you want to connect to other data sources like contract data, forms, meetings, Excel, Teams, Notion, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. This is where we can get it from. Case study, trial balance, sales transaction, purchase transaction, payroll transaction. Like so. Perplexity is interesting because it's a slight difference. It doesn't have it has its own model called Sonar, but it also has the access to other models available too, including ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. For now, we're just going to select choose best and let that start building. So whilst it's doing that, let's move on to the next use case. We'll come back to that one. The next one is we're going to stretch this further a bit now. We're going to see just how far, we can get these tools. We're going to get to do 12-month rolling forecasts plus a Monte Carlo simulation. Now, previously, that used to take a long time to be able to calculate and compute. Most finance teams just wouldn't do that altogether because of how intensive it is. But it does give us a far more predictable and statistically accurate forecast from that perspective. So what we can do is copy that prompt. I'm going to load this in, start a new chat, and I'm going to paste that prompt in. So this use case is to produce a 12-month rolling forecast from year-to-date actuals plus a run rate projection for the CEO from the context of the year-to-date of the company with a format with prior year attached. So for this one, I'm going to load trial balance, recent reports of prior year information. And then I'm also going to include as well within here, we should have trial balance. We'll leave, that should be fine for the moment there. Now, again, one of the things we always want to make sure is when we're doing this is also to include our traceable formula too. So we're going to paste that in. Traceable formulas, work paper structure, and validation checks. So I'm going to get that loaded. And we're going to start this on ChatGPT as well. So we're going to have to include those validation checks. We're going to go into our prompt, go into like so, load this up, and have it pulled through. We're going to attach case study, financial statements, trial balance, and we should be fine with that for the moment. We might even include dividend schedule if we want to factor in prior dividend activity too into the forecast. Thinking mode is enabled, everything's attached, so let it run. So you can see here, Claude started to think, it's starting to go through the skill, it's going to understand what's going to be done, it's going to reason through it, and understand what we need to do for that task. Whilst it's loading, let's keep going. So we've got rolling 12-month forecast plus Monte Carlo simulation. Let's go into our variance commentary and reporting. So variance analysis and board commentary based on the trial balance, the reconciled numbers. We can do that. So what we're going to do is have that loaded. We're going to copy that information from the prompt. We're going to paste it in. We're going to add in our validation checks, our traceable formulas, our standard instructional wording, like so. And in terms of the sources here, what did we say? We said we needed examples, context, budget approved in December, expensing the claim. So we'll upload onto here, trial balance. Let's do that, and business overview. Business overview, trial balance. Now, again, if you were doing this in the real world, what you'd want to do is at the end of each month, you would want to record, transcribe your monthly meetings and say, have that hands-on call, your business partner, and say what happened in the month. You have that Microsoft Teams meeting transcribed, and you use that as the source or the context to enrich the Excel, enrich the numbers. And you can do that with having a connector. So connecting it up to your Microsoft 365, like we've done so here, so you can enrich it with your Teams call. So that's where it picks up the semantic understanding. It can do mechanical explanations, but unless it has that, contextual understanding of why the numbers went up, other than sales price went up, it can get us there. So we can get that loaded. Whilst it's doing that, let's have a look. We'll also get this loaded up into Copilot. Interestingly, Copilot said something went wrong, try again later. So we'll press try again. And we'll paste this one in. Got traceable formulas as per expected. We can copy and paste this variance commentary straight from here, fully paste it, upload, business overview and trial balance, like so. And enable 5.4 think deeper. So that's going to start building.
Whilst everything's loading, Peter, I've got a good question.
Yes, please do. Whilst I get some more use cases.
Yeah, so Liz asked, this reminds me of a little bit like what happened when everyone got access to things like PBI, and all of a sudden there is this proliferation of uncontrolled reports across the company that no one understands but the creator. I can see the similar happening with AI. What are your tips here before we end up with a similar Wild West where the likes of us transformation consultants need to come in and unpick later?
Oh, such a good question. Yes, so the temptation here is to explode your reporting. Is to say, well, now we can, this sort of the Parkinson's law, because you can now do it, you might now do it. And so really you want to be constrained and at least have two parts to look at to actually document your process today and see what you do as a business. So, and you can get Claude to do this, you can get ChatGPT to do this. It's literally laid out. So, step 1, I do this, step 2, I do this, step 3, I do this. You can talk to Claude or talk to ChatGPT or Copilot, with your microphone. And then from there, identify which bits you understand your use cases, and then you can know, well, what's right for change. I used to do 12 steps to do a reconciliation. Now, of those 12 steps, I actually only need to do 10 or 9 steps or 6 steps because of AI, of which of those 6 steps, 4 or 5 of them can now be done by a Claude, a ChatGPT, a Copilot, a Gemini, and of which then I'm just left with, step 5 and 6. So as much you want to be cleaning the house as much as adding nice things to it. And otherwise we just get a messy house and nobody's happy. So as much a conscious effort to start deleting parts of to start cutting your workflow as much as possible, whilst respecting the quality and the control you need for your outputs.
That's great. You could also set access controls for projects and things like that, can't you? So only certain people can access certain projects, and the admin, yes, I think, can always see the prompts that were put in to build the projects in the first place. So you'll always have that knowledge in the business as long as it's been built on the business or enterprise account. Is that right?
Totally, yeah. So if I was going to make a project here, what I might do is firstly label them like GL accounts or chart of accounts. I might label all of my FP&A, for example, 4000 code. I might call this FP&A from there, and I might call this month end commentary, for example. And then from there, I can add a description of what that task is going to do, and then can say, is it private just for me, or is it for the whole organization to get involved with? For this one, there's quite a few people working on it, so I can create that project. The other one as well, which you've alluded to, Leo, as well, is having fine-grained control over the data and connectors. That's a really common concern or a common question. The way you can do that is if you go into your connectors, you can go into an example one like DocuSign, and within here, you have the option to say, well, for my read access, so when it can read information, do I want it to always ask for approval to say, look, am I allowed to access it before I get it? or deny it or outright. And then for the write functions as well, write or delete, again, always allow or needs approval. For this scenario, I've said read access is okay, but for any write functions to other systems, I want approval. Or sometimes you might just flat out block it to certain parts of your team.
Perfect.
So whilst that's loading, let's get the next use case going, which is all about investment appraisal. We're going to see if it can do a fully discounted cash flow forecast for this business based on the available data. So what we have here is we've actually provided it the context in the prompt, so we don't need to provide anything further within it. But of course, if you had that information already, we could attach that as a file like so. We can then begin to paste this in with our traceable formula and with our validation checks and workbook structure, and have that loaded in like so. And then submit. Let's see how the others are doing so far. That's running. That's currently running. That one's running. Okay, great. Whilst that's getting loaded, we'll be able to review all of these together. Let's go into, we've done investment capital, lease versus buy. This is a key one that you might have as a scenario saying, look, we've got two scenarios to buy the same thing as an asset. What's the recommended approach based on this? So from here, we might want to insert this information. We can copy that prompt out, include that within it. So let's
just conscious of time, Peter. We've got 10 minutes left, so it'd be good just to get into some of the outputs and hopefully have a little bit of time for questions at the end.
Yes, of course. So let's just get this one loaded. And then by the time this is done, we should have some outputs ready to review. Like so. It's just loading at the moment. It's loading that stage. Whilst that's building out, let's check on Copilot. And let's check over here as well. So all currently working underway. What might be helpful to do is whilst this is loading, is we'll bring up some of the key points on the slides, and then we'll come back to once those have been fully populated. Just they're nearly there. And whilst we do that, let's just get that loaded. In there. And
everyone will get this deck as well, which has all of the prompts in there. And
so you'll be getting all of these prompts through here as well, in addition to the full library. I will keep checking on the outputs whilst they're just being loaded. Here we go. The first one's just been produced. So let's have a look.
And it is a lot faster when you don't have 50 tabs open in your browser and running a webinar with nearly 200 people on it.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so here we go. So here's the annual budget that we've been produced. Let's take a look. This is the FY26 annual budget. Let's open it up. I'm just going to bring it on screen now. Hopefully you can see it. And so we have a whole range of tabs here. So let's highlight those so we can nicely see them. So firstly, we have our review workflow. So it's identified the purpose of this workbook, the tab structure. So in terms of what this is, assumptions, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, quarterly summary, KPI dashboard, validation checks, color key, so hard coded formulas, and with the review checklist for the finance director, what do they actually need to do within here? On the first tab, we have assumptions. So got revenue growth by channel, what those might be in terms of growth rates, gross margin, operating expenditure, operating expense changes in terms of changes in salaries, employees NI, pension cost, depreciation, etc., working capital days, other assumptions including UK corporation tax rate, and as well seasonality profile of the business. We have an opening balance sheet numbers as well, followed by then a full monthly P&L budget. So we have our actual values here, so we can see that in the assumptions tab. That brings us back. And then suddenly now we've got each formula that's driven by the number. It's green, we know it's formula driven. From January to December, we have an FY26 total. We can then see cost of sales, operating expenses, operating profit, profit for the year, fully traceable.
That is insane.
We can see full monthly balance sheet, fixed assets, current assets, liabilities, equity, also financially ties up with the trial balance movements as well in under 5 minutes. Monthly cash flow forecast, so we can see that in the process. So operating profit, investing activities, financing activities, taking the balance sheet and the P&L movements to calculate that. So then we get the full picture here. We can then see it summarized by quarterly summary, both at P&L, seasonality, and quarter end balance sheet too. So we can see those end positions. Again, all formula driven. I can verify that by doing command left square bracket, and like seeing so. Then with a KPI dashboard, so showing revenue, profitability, the margins, the working capital days, even says the word days in them. It's done the formula to do that. The cash position, cash as months as percentage of operating expenditure, headcount changes, and revenue per full-time employee. And look at that, we can see the business is improving based on the budget.
Validation. If anyone else's jaw's dropping right now, just drop a yes in the chat.
Good question from Tracy. If you tweak the assumptions, does it change the whole thing? Yes, it does. This is one of the beauty things. Traceable formulas, that's what we want. So with inside of here, I can change the growth rate. If I change this up to 20%, say, there we go. Budget's been updated. P&L will also increase in the amounts that everything's flown through completely.
Other thing to mention as well, now you've got Claude inside Excel. So once you've got the final document, if you wanted to make any other changes or add tabs and get it to build stuff within Excel, you can do it via the add-ins.
Exactly. And from a review perspective, this is what you want. Your validation checks, like for example, the seasonality equals to 100. The balance sheet equals to the source data. It does. The cash flow reconciles. It does. We can see the full traceable formulas here. This is what gets you comfortable as a financial controller from that perspective. There might be other validation checks too, but over time, you'll create this with your own team. Let's see how the others are doing as we're nearly there. That one's nearly loaded. Oh, that one's actually hit a limit, but that's okay. We can press continue.
Question from Tamara. She said, if you've already got an Excel forecast model, can you get Claude to reforecast in the same format, populating all the data input tabs and actualizing up to available data, i.e. March 26 actuals for P&L, balance sheet and cash flow statements?
Really good question. Yes. So in your facets frameworks, that's what the E example is all about. Your example is either you define it in words or you say, I already have something I like, which is my gold standard, refer to this, and then repopulate that. So that's really what that part of the facets framework is for, is to leverage. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for every single task. Although what you might find is that your Excels are historically very large and perhaps even ineligible for even human review because they're so complex. So it's all about making your review workflow quicker. See how we're doing here. That one's nearly done. That's nearly done. We'll get those nearly loaded. So you can see just from the, just how in depth you can go with those examples. We'll get the others loaded, and feel free to hang around in terms of there. In terms of kind of new risks, just to be mindful of in terms of April 2026, new models does mean if you do have an API connected to it, it might have broken by now. So do check on that. Something to think about. For scheduled tasks, making sure that you keep your files fresh and updated, or you keep your folders and your SharePoints updated. Otherwise, it's using old data to come up with new tasking. So be mindful of that. And also making sure that hallucination is a function of context. So or task difficulty. So if there's too much context involved and it starts forgetting stuff at the top, this is where it starts making things up because it's forgotten the start of the conversation. Much like humans start forgetting the start of their own conversation with people. We forget.
And is that why projects are better, because it's starting from a fresh chat each time, just using the context that you've given it?
Yeah, a human analogy is like it's going to a meeting and everyone's pre-briefed and pre-read some reading material ahead of that meeting, rather than just going in and hoping they remember it all.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, I'm just conscious of time. We probably need to do another one of these on FP&A because there's just so many that we could have got through. But hopefully those couple of examples have been really, really eye-opening for you just to see its capability. It's come on so much just since December with traceable formula, really reliable data and outputs, and now you can set it up in a way that is safe and secure. So if anyone wants to hang around and ask Peter more questions, feel free. I'll get through as many of them as we can, but just to respect everyone else's time, thank you so much for joining us. The next events, Peter, can you just bring up that slide so that people can see the other events that we've got coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So
we run these workshops on a monthly basis. So every single month we will be doing different topics. So in May it's cash flow and working capital. In June it's AI for board and stakeholder communication. And in July, it's audit readiness and year-end close. And for each one, now that all of you would have registered through the scorecard, if you can't make any event, we'll always send the recording through to everybody who's registered to the series. So you'll always get that, and you'll always get notified about the upcoming events with links to register. So hopefully you'll never be out of the loop. But if anybody needs me, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you need any tools or resources. But let's jump into any questions. So Tracy said, what about if you wanted a level of granularity that you don't originally put into the inputs?
Level of granularity you don't put into the inputs. Well, if I'm reading that right, it sounds like, how do I get the detail about sort of providing the detail, or how do I get it to be granular without being too?
I think it might be if you've originally prompted and asked for something, and then you want it to go into more depth or more detail after you've already made something. How do you do that?
I see. The simple answer for that is if you go into your Claude response. So, for example, this variance analysis, and if I said from here, like go into further detail, or I provided more context, if I said drill down on the P&L activity by GL code now, rather than just at the top level, I can do so.
I can't see your screen, Peter. I can only see the
there we go.
Q&A.
Beg your pardon. Sorry about that. So yeah, if you can see here, I can just chat back to it. It doesn't have to be one in, one out. The beautiful thing with AI is you can just have a full conversation with it. So I can say, I can drill down on the P&L activity by specific GL code, and then it will produce me a fresh output inside of here, which you can then iterate, or as Leo says, you can get it inside of Excel. So I can just ask that question. The admin, I don't have loaded at the moment, but you can ask it and it just updates the current Excel you have rather than making a V2. It just updates V1.
Perfect. Sean said, I've produced a fully integrated balance sheet P&L cash flow forecast in Claude, but I cannot download it. Any pointers? That's a first for me. I haven't seen that.
Download it. Well, a few things that might be going on there. It would be useful to know what plan that you're using. Second of which, is it that it just can't preview or just can't download outright? And there is a file size limit of, I think, 25 megabytes per Excel. So it might be that you've breached it by that size, or it might have been that it was able to produce, but for some reason it struggles to write the export code because the file in the directory is too large to shift out to download. Can't download on enterprise plan. Interesting. I'm happy to follow with that up on a separate email, or if you send screenshots of the error message you're coming up, I'm happy to respond to
that. Lindy said, keen to see the output from the Copilot trended FY26 budget task that we just saw.
Sure, of course. So let's go into that. So this one was the annual budget build inside of Copilot. Interestingly here, it hasn't actually built the Excel, despite we said produce an Excel.
Claude's the best for Excel with traceable formula, right?
Currently, at the moment, it is dominating the market in terms of its performance for finance and accounting. Though, watch this space as the race to the top is ever changing. It's a bit like search engines in the early 2000s. You know, Google, Bing, Yahoo, Ask Jeeves. Who ends up on top? We'll find out.
I feel like I'm cheating on ChatGPT at the moment. I've literally moved across to Claude, and it just doesn't feel right. But it's so much better.
I mean, case in point here, if I build a 12-month forecast year to date, let's have a look at ChatGPT as a comparative. If I go into here, open up, get that loaded. We do have some tabs here. That one's looking pretty good, actually. And it's done full Monte Carlo simulation as well, which is a very demanding task of like over 10,000 rows of simulation data.
Oh, wow.
To be able to produce that. Because
ChatGPT couldn't do that a month ago, could it?
No, not 2 months ago. And with an interactive dashboard as well. Although we do have some formula errors, so it wasn't totally perfect.
We've got a couple of people asking about Copilot. Have we managed to get a good output from Copilot?
Good question. I'm happy to share the output afterwards post this call. It might just be the time it takes. It may not suffice for this session, which is despite being Microsoft, despite being Excel, you'd expect it to be the most high performance of them. Doesn't seem to be the case at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Hence for the new models and etc.
Cool. Peter asked a question. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to run this live now, given how much time it's taking, but he said, can you run a huge outlier in your data and see if your AI picks it up?
Yes, actually, that's a good idea. If you come to next ones, I might bake in an injected like anomaly inside of the data set. So something that's like just off or a material error or something, which will kind of tell everyone in advance and see if it picks it up. Cool. Good idea.
Anthony asked, what's your favorite LLM to use for Excel?
We use all 6. I like to measure my team by what's our usage across them. At the moment, Claude's dominating about, I'd say, of the 6, like 70%, considering what the average should be like 16%. That's a high concentration towards Claude at the moment in the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm. Sheldon asked, can you please briefly go into the assumptions you gave Claude for the model and how it computed those? For example, how did it know to increase debtors rather than cash with the sales figures?
Really good question. If I open that up, this is the year-to-date budget I think they're referring to.
Yeah, I think it was the most complete example we've seen.
So in the working capital days. So what it's done here is it said, look, based on the working capital days here, which is pulled in through the assumptions, it's then affected the monthly balance sheet based on the timing that you collect your payments. So for example, if it said, okay, I'm on average from the sell I make in January, I expect it to be in 42 days. Therefore, cash is knocked on 42 days. Therefore, I should get deferring by 30 days from there and doing that ratio. I would expect to be inside. Yeah, so it's doing assumptions, B32 as a percentage of monthly P&A as a percentage of revenue times 12 over 365. So B32 takes us back to our debtor days. So it's doing it as a fraction of 30 days. So then it knows, well, 80% of it's collected in month, 12% of it's collected first month, assuming even accrual. So there is an assumption there that cash flows are evenly accrued. You could affect that assumption later.
Mm-hmm. George asked, can it build macros for more complex Excel models?
Really good question. Yes, it can, definitely can. You can ask it to do it. One thing I would throw back to you is the macro needed to link other documents to each other, or is it to run Power Queries? Basically, just make sure that you actually need macros before. I would recommend to push these tools as hard as you can before starting using macros.
Okay. Lindy asked, who is responsible for writing the command, the FP&A team or the IT/data scientist?
Really good question. As this is your IT team this is part of the challenge, is that they might know a lot about AI, but not a lot about finance and accounting. There's a domain limitation. You guys have that. You know what the outputs are supposed to be. So really what we're saying is each department, sales, marketing, finance, accounting, ops, owns that prompt, IP, because you guys know the process, rather than starting with the engineering team trying to understand what what revenue contracting is. Start with the domain knowledge at your level, and then if you need IT support from helping connect tools or helping select the access controls from an IT control perspective, but really the domain knowledge sits with you guys.
Perfect. Ben Clist asked, is there any integration between Claude and a BI visualization tools to help build BI models, things like that?
Good question. So we can answer that, or interestingly, it's on the investment memo, and it's done. If I go onto here, reached it's on there, that's fine. If I go on to Plus, I can go on to connectors. I can search for connectors, add one. If I browse, if I search for BI or Power BI, PowerPoint by Anthropic, that's it, Power BI. At the moment, so I know Copilot is connected to it, so you can get it connected to Copilot.
Copilot and Power BI.
Yeah, Copilot and Power BI can connect to each other. If not, I'm sure Alteryx, it depends on your provider as well. Which one's more important to have? Another software that connects to Claude, or is it more important to have Claude and find another software that links to that? So it depends on your business and how reliant you place upon your existing infrastructure.
Am I right in thinking as well, if a connector doesn't exist, you can set up your own, getting the API key and doing it that way?
Correct. Yes, you can make custom connectors inside of Claude. So if it's not on the marketplace, doesn't mean it's not possible. You can create custom connectors. The keyword you're searching for is MCP connector, MCP. And then you'll either need support from your IT team or engage a specialist like ourselves to help you get it set up.
Funnily enough, Umar just put that in the chat. So they've connected an MCP between Power BI and Claude.
Perfect.
Thanks for that, Umar.
So it's available, but just not on the marketplace.
Perfect. Well, I think that is all the questions. So thank you all for attending, and I hope you found it useful. Hopefully it will take a little bit of weight off your shoulders. I think the only place to start is just to start and just spend half an hour playing around with it, get the facets framework in there. The outputs will start to get more reliable, more useful. The more you play with it, the more time it'll start to save you. So hopefully it'll be useful, and we'll get all of the resources out this week with recordings, slides and prompt cheat sheets for both this event and the last event. So hopefully see you all soon at the next event.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.